Hi guys, it's Amit from Unlimited Elements. Thank you for joining this webinar. In the webinar today, I'm going to take you into the process of making an Elementor widget from scratch, even before we have the HTML. So the first part is we're going to create the HTML, and the second part is we're going to convert the HTML into an Elementor widget. So what I'm going to be making is a post grid. Someone asked me for a post grid with this kind of style, so it will be showing posts. He wanted the post to be random, and he wanted this hover effect. He wanted to be able to determine how many posts go in a column and in a row, and he wanted this button to link to the post. So it's pretty complex what we're going to do. For anyone who doesn't want to learn how to make it themselves but wants to use a pre-made widget that does the same thing, after I'm going to finish this video, I will upload the widget to our widget library, and anyone who wants will be able to use it. So we got some complex HTML over here that we need to create, and that will be the first part. For creating HTML quickly, what I use is CodePen. I use CodePen for the reason that it's fast, it's easy, I don't need any software installed, and I can also send a link to my friends if I need help, and they can fork the CodePen that I send them. I will show you how they can do that as well. So first of all, I'll give my pen a name. I'm going to call it post grid. And the next part is making a CSS grid. Now, I'm not an expert in HTML and CSS, so I'm going to search for a quick snippet. And one of the other things that was important for me is that all the squares will be an exact square. And so I'm going to search on Google for CSS grid perfect square, and go into one of the results and check out the CSS in HTML. Let's do run code snippet, and over here you can see that it looks pretty good, and it seems to be what I wanted. So I'm going to copy the CSS and paste that, and I'm going to copy the HTML. Perfect. Now we can see it over here. It's a nice little grid with squares in it. And the first thing before starting to edit this is I want to add IDs and classes, so I won't have any conflicts in my website. This is pretty generic, giving a class name container. You can have conflicts with your template or theme or stuff like that. So I'm going to change this to an ID. And I'm going to call it post grid, and we can delete the class. Let's make it for our first save over here. Now once you save, you have the ability to fork. So great, post grid, and over here hashtag, which is ID, post grid, and we want to change the other selectors to work with the ID as well. And when we'll be making this into an Elementor widget, we'll change this ID into a dynamic ID. It won't be a static ID like it is now. For the div, I'm gonna give it a class also to be more specific, so I'm gonna call it post grid item. And over here in the div, looks good. So all we need to do is add the selector to the CSS. And we see only one because only one has the class. I'm going to copy that and paste. Perfect. Now over here in our grid template columns, it's showing 4 columns, but I will want this number to be editable, and to edit it by adding each time 1 FR is kind of complicated. So there is another syntax over here that we can use, which is the number of columns that you want, comma 1 FR, and then we can delete these 4 FR from here. I think that's the correct syntax. Let me just check I wrote it correctly. And we want to add the word repeat. So this tells it how many times to repeat itself. So if we would change this to 3, then there will be only 3 columns. Great. So this is for desktop view. And now I want to make a media query for tablet and mobile devices. So I'm going to go from media, which is media query. And over here we write the max width of the device. And from that width, we can give changes that we want to occur. So tablet size is 768. And again, you can change this to whatever you want, but this is how I'm used to working. And we take this part and we tell it that on tablet there will be only 3 columns and not 4 columns. Same thing we do for mobile, which is from 420 pixels. And we can decide to show only 1 column on mobile. So I think that's pretty good. Pretty good. And to test this, I'm just going to click save, and I'm just going to, what is change view? Do we have mobile here? No. Okay, I'm just going to shorten this. Okay, seems like I missed something. Let's check it out if we can find it. Okay, I forgot the selector. I just wrote, so what we need is the selector itself inside of here. Yeah, that looks better. Sorry for that. Perfect. So let's click save again. Make this smaller. Okay, now you can see I made it smaller and there are only 3 columns instead of 4. So it seems it's working okay. And what else are we going to do? We can start creating our box. Now, inside of the box, there's going to be an image overlay. So we can start from the image overlay. So I'm going to call it div class post grid image overlay, and this overlay will need an image background. Now I need to get a background for this, so let's add it a style. Let's move this over here. Background image URL, and we can give it the URL of the image. And to get a URL of an image, I'm just gonna go into one of my other code pens in my dashboard and check out if I have a pen with an image. Perfect. And we'll take this image. We can close this and put the image over here. Now we're not seeing anything yet, since this div is just an empty div without any height inside of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the item position relative, and for the overlay we'll give an absolute positioning. I'm going to copy the class, and I'm going to give it position absolute, and it will be top 0 pixels, left 0, right 0, bottom 0. And as you can see, now we can see it since it's stretching all over the grid itself. I will add also background size cover, so the image won't repeat itself, and background position center, so the image will be in the center instead of on the side. And again, you can decide to do whatever you want here, so that's perfect. Now I want to do is add the hover effect. So what we will do is decide that whenever someone hovers over the item, this image overlay will scale. So we'll use transform for that. And it will scale to 1.1, which is like adding 10%. And maybe later on, transform scale, I think over here we don't need, okay, perfect. You can see how it grows. Now we want it to grow gradually, so we'll add a transition. And we want it not to go out of the bounds of the red box, so we'll give the red box an overflow hidden. Yeah, that's the desired effect. And we can also play with the opacity a little bit. So at the beginning, the opacity of the image will be 50%, and once you hover, it will grow to 90%. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. So we finished with the image, and what we have left is the content inside. So for the content inside, I'm going to do this after the image. I could do it after or before, it doesn't really matter. So this is the image, and inside what we're going to have is a title. So we can use a similar class. I made a bit of a mess over here. Okay. Perfect. And let's just write a generic title. Let's go for description. Now I can see it's making the this higher, so we're going to need to think how to place it. Maybe we'll place it also with absolute and wrap it with the divs. Okay, perfect. And let's go for the button. The button is an A tag usually. And we'll call it read more. Since it's a post, someone wants to read more. Here it is. Okay, let's wrap this with a div, and we'll call it post content or something like that. And to place it, I'm going to use absolute again. So let's just copy what we did over here. I'm gonna copy all of this. Let's go before the media queries. And what we want is the post grid content. Perfect. And we're going to only leave the absolute positioning. Now over here, I'm going to give text align center. And to make this centered vertically, I'm going to give it display flex and align items center and justify content center. And we need the lines to break, so to do that, what I'm going to add is flex direction column, since now it's in a row. Perfect. Okay, and now we need to give a little bit of CSS for our 3 parts that we've added over here. So let's give them some CSS. Maybe let's give all the content a color of white. And over here, we can copy this selector, the CSS selector, and add at the end post grid title. Let's give it a font size of 22, and it already has a color. Perfect. Over here, I forgot to change the class. And we can style our button. Let's give it also a class. Post grid button. So to style a button, I always give it display inline block and some padding. So let's go for 10 up and down and 30 from the sides. It will also be color white. And border 1 1 pic, solid white, text decoration none, margin top. Let's go for 20 pics. And let's also space the title from the description. Let's get some lorem ipsum text for the description, so it won't only be 2 words. Should look more like a post intro. Okay, this is not bad at all. I'm just thinking if I want the text to be so wide. That's exactly the reason why I checked a longer text, because okay, I want to make 2 changes. One change is I want our text to be bigger, our title to be bigger, and the next one is I don't want this to be so wide, so I'm going to give it a left of 30 and a right of 30. Okay, perfect. Now it's not going full width. I think this is great. I mean, you can keep on working on this, but the basic is great. And the next part, we're getting into the interesting part, which is changing this into an Elementor widget. So I think we're already there, so we can start doing it. I'm going to open up my WordPress. Inside of here, I'm going into unlimited elements. You do want to be in the category you want to add your new widget to. So in my case, it's post grid. I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna click add widget. Over here, I'm gonna call it post grid overlay hover. Overlay image, maybe image hover. Perfect. Click tab, widget name is populated, add widget. New widget has been added, double click. And over here we can give that widget a icon. I don't know. Doesn't really matter for this example. I don't want to take time on it. Let's just go for this one. And let's go into HTML. Copy the HTML. Go into CSS and copy the CSS. So at this stage, we are finished with our CodePen, and we can close it. We don't need it anymore. Next part is changing our static ID to a dynamic ID, and we need to do that in the HTML and in the CSS. Important not to delete the hashtag since it's part of the selector. I mean, the dynamic ID doesn't come with the hashtag. Perfect. So we're going over all the elements and just making sure that we don't use our static ID. Almost done. That's it. Perfect. Click update once in a while to save. And next part is starting to replace these static HTML parts into attributes. So in attributes, I'm going to add an attribute. I'm going to call it post list. I'm going to call it post list, and the type will be post list as well. And I'm going to click add attribute. Inside of the HTML, right now I have a new part that is opened, which is the part of the loop that will repeat itself. So we need to leave only one item in the loop, so I'm deleting all the other items, and I'm cutting out command X and the first item. I will replace the first item with put items, which tells it to bring the loop and start looping it, and depending how many items there are. I paste down here in item HTML the one box, the one grid box that we have, and I need to start replacing each part over here with the correct attribute. Now the attributes are on the right side over here, and if you click this item post list icon, and we can see all the attributes that are associated with a post list. So for example, the title, let's search for it over here. So title, and we can replace the intro text. Let's go for intro. The read more button and the link we need to change. Perfect. And the image. Let's see where the image is. I see over here image. Perfect. So we've changed everything, I think. Everything we needed. And now we can test this. So I'm going to add a new page. Edit with Elementor. And on the left side where the widgets are, and we can find our post grid. And this is how we called it. This is the icon we gave. And I throw that inside. And it seems to be working. But we need to start adding attributes so we can edit this. So let's start adding the attributes one by one. First attribute, I think I'm going to do let's do the gap. So the gap is a number. Suffix none. Default value 5, add attribute, jump back into the CSS, and replace the 5 with the new attribute. That's how easy it is. Next thing I'm going to do is number of items. Again, it's a number field, so number of items on desktop, and the default is, I'm going to change it to 3. And let's duplicate this and change it to number of items on tablet, and the default will be 2, and number of items on mobile, and the default will be 1.
I didn't get that.
Oops, Siri, sorry. Okay, perfect. So 3, 2, 1, and back into the CSS, and over here is where we determine how many columns. So this one is for desktop, and at the end we have our media queries. Gonna do the tablet and the mobile. Let's click update and check everything's working. And first we need to save. Refresh. Okay, this is looking a bit better already. So number of items on desktop, if we change it to 2, okay, This is much better. And the next thing I'm going to add is the background color. So it's kind of reddish right now, and not everyone will want a red color. So it's determined over here. I'm going to go into attributes, add attribute, and give a color field, color attribute. I'm going to call it background overlay color, and give it a default value. I'm going to go for a darker default value. And default values are important because you need to understand when the user adds this to the page, he's going to see this. So red is really a testing color, and I think a darker color would do the job better. Perfect. So we got that set up, and let's click update, refresh. And yeah, this is starting to look much better. And the read more button works as well. I'm going to add a couple of more attributes. So let's do the button text. I'm going to use a text field. And let's replace it. So a user can edit this text and put whatever he likes. Now over here you can see I'm seeing the item attributes, but we added a main attribute, so I need to jump into main and change that. Perfect. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some attributes that will allow the user to turn on and off the title, the description, and the button. So let's see how it's done. I'm going to add an attribute. It's going to be a radio boolean. I'm going to call it show button, and the options here are true or false, yes or no. I'm going to go into the HTML, and we need to wrap this button with an if statement. And so to do that, down here we have some code examples. So I'm going to click the code examples, and on the top here it shows twig code examples. I'm gonna open this, and it just shows like an if statement. So I click on that, it pastes the if statement, an example of it, and let's see how it works. So over here what it says, if attribute name, and so our attribute name, let's check what we gave, and it's called show button. If show button is let's say true, then we want this HTML to show. Okay, now we can do this all in one line or not. Okay, let's check it. So show button is true right now. If we change it to false, all the buttons disappear. Let's do the same thing for the description and for the title. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going into attributes. I'm going to duplicate this one. Instead of show button, it will be called show title. Need to replace the name. And duplicate it again. Perfect. So we got the attributes, and over here in the HTML we need to wrap them, each one with an if statement. So this is my title. I'm gonna wrap it end if to end our if, and instead of show button, it's show title. Let's do the same thing with the description. Don't forget the end if. And replace our attribute name over here with show description. Click update and check this. Click to edit, and we can start playing around with this to see that everything is working. And it's working great. Let's check this one also. Perfect. So everything is working as we expected. We have a post grid over here. Oh, we didn't test this one. Let's test it. Looks nice. So let's also check the gap that it's working. Okay, it seems that it's working okay. Let's change it to 0. Yeah, no gap. So everything seems to be working. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. If you have any suggestions, please don't hesitate to contact me, and see you next time.